Okay, so today we're going to do exercise 208, which basically a lot of you have worked in SketchUp before and you've gone to the 3D warehouse and picked out a component and used it. How many people have done that before? Right? I'd be surprised if not more of you. Some of you must be shy. I would say it's probably 100% of you have done that. So the thing about it is with Rhino, there really aren't as many good sites to get 3D images of things. The good news is that you can build your own. And so we on the Digital Tools site have a plethora of these things that people have uploaded over time. There are some other sites that are out there. Flying Architecture is a really good one. That has a bunch of great stuff that's out there. They have 3D models, so we can look at the 3D models. Flying Architecture has almost entirely stuff for Rhino and V-Ray. So there's a bunch of pre-done stuff. Obviously, they're trying to sell some stuff now. But there should be some free things available here, too, as well. I'll have to look at it. They've redone the website since the last time I looked at it. When it comes time to model your chair, so here's a wooden chair that's free. Obviously, if we look through it. If you just, like for your assignment, if you download this and use this as your chair, chances are I'm going to know, right? So build your own, right? Don't do that. At one time, I've had somebody do that before. And so it doesn't end well for people. So just build your own, okay? But the point is that there are some libraries of stuff that is out there available for you, which is not a problem when you're working on something that's like a studio project or something. The point behind today is that we're going to try to build our own set. This is the first time that you will have free reign on how to build something, right? So thus far, everything that I've given you, we're building the spider, and you're going to use the 3D rail, and I walk you through step by step. This is how we're going to do it, right? We build the little concrete bridge. I walk you through step by step how to do it. This time, you're going to say, let me find an object, and I'm going to figure out how to model that object, and you have to come up with the step-by-step to get there, right? So it's the first real test for you. I would pick something that is integral to making a building, like a window or a door or something along those lines. If you're not quite comfortable in Rhino yet, pick something that's a very rectangular object, right? A door or a window is a good example of a relatively rectangular object. If you are feeling more adventurous, maybe try a faucet or something like that. A lot of times the manufacturer websites have information for you, and you can use this as a guide. So for example, I pulled up Pella Windows and Doors. It's a door company, not the most exciting doors, but not the lowest end doors in the world. One of the things that a lot of times you have to look for, though, is they have like a professional website and a homeowner website. Generally, you want the professional website because that's where the AutoCAD files are going to live. And so in the Pella example here, I click on Pella Professional. I get over to the Pella website here. And from here, I could say, OK, let me look at the windows. Right? And I can look down here and say, oh, I'm interested in a particular type. Right? So let's say it's this type. And I want a casement of this type. And then when I get to this page, we see that we have specifications and downloads available for us. So if I was working in Revit, I could actually download a full 3D model example. But we're going to be working in Rhino, so we're going to get a 2D elevation view. So I can click on the little elevation view here, click on size tables, and it'll start downloading an AutoCAD drawing of their sizes. Right? So I have an AutoCAD drawing to base what I'm going to work on from, which is good. Another example would be like the Kohler website. This is for faucets and that kind of thing. I just picked a Fairfax faucet. The cheater way of doing it is to download the 3D model that they've already given you. But part of the reason that I'm showing you that this stuff exists is because there's no harm in using it down the road. Right now, you have to model something from scratch. But down the road, we're doing an interior rendering, and you decide you want to do the bathroom. Go to the Kohler website, get a toilet, get a faucet, right? If you do all that stuff, you're still going to have to apply the material, but it's going to look that much better. That make sense? Right? So use this to your advantage. Generally, most things, especially if they're in AutoCAD format, play really nicely. Okay? There's also a dimensions and measurements PDF. That's the one I'm going to download for this example for right now, not the 3D model, just so that you can see it. So let me go ahead and save link as. and I'm going to save it to my flash drive to today's folder. And I'll go ahead and click Save. OK. So I'm going to go into Rhino, and I'm going to start with the window example. And this is something that I do when I'm modeling a project, one of my own projects. A lot of times I don't actually go to a specific window manufacturer, but I make a set of standard windows, and I've done it long enough to where I have pretty much all the windows that I need or that I typically use. They're simplified versions. They're not the full detail, but they're enough detail to get a pretty good sense of the window. And because I'm using it as a block reference in a final drawing, right, it's really easy to have all the materials assigned and have everything ready and just dump it into a hole that's in the wall. Right? So it makes life really easy down the road. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it in this kind of Rhino file. I'm going to go to File and then Import. And this was the AutoCAD of the window sizes. The defaults are fine. I'm already in inches, so we'll go ahead and say OK. And it will bring in a file of all the various windows that they have available. Okay? They include grids on the windows, so I could choose to model the grids. I don't have to. Right? So I'm not asking you to make every one of these windows. That's unrealistic. What I want you to do is pick one and make that one. And so it's going to be up to you as to what size you want. So let's say I wanted a 2040. There's my 2040 right there. Right? I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And we'll move it down over here by the origin. And then I can go ahead and get rid of all the rest of this because I don't really care about that. Okay? Now I'll zoom in on this one piece. I don't need the text because I know it's a 2040. And now I have to start making this. So let me go ahead and move this so that the corner of my window, turn on my object snaps, is at 0, 0. OK, so now I have this set of lines. And I want to start actually making my window out of it. So for me, the fastest way of doing it would be to start with a rectangular plane. And again, part of the challenge today is for you to figure out how you want to make it. Right? And so I'm showing you how I would make it, but that's not necessarily the step-by-step for how you're going to go through it. I just want to show you the skills. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go into shaded mode so that I can see it. And there it is. So I have a plane, and I have a bunch of lines. I'm going to use a command called split that will divide up this rectangular plane into a bunch of little pieces that I can then extrude, push and pull. So I'm going to type split or go up to, I think it's under Edit and then Split. And it's going to say Select Object to Split. I'm going to pick the surface. Go ahead and hit Enter. Select Cutting Objects. I'm going to pick Curve, right, all of those curves. I'll go ahead and hit Enter. And now, see how I end up with a bunch of individual little surfaces? Okay? So once I have those surfaces together, we can go ahead and do some extruding. Okay? So this is the frame that goes around. So let me extrude surface. Right? And so this would be the thickness of the wall, right? Which, depending on which size or thickness of wall is going to vary, I'm going to do it as a generic number, and I'll say that's 6 inches. Right? We can debate on what the technicalities are in a different class. But for right now, we're doing approximate values. I forgot to say that it should be solid. And then I'll go ahead and do 6 inches. And that gives me the initial frame. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this down. So I did move and then V for vertical. And we're going to go down so that it's actually below, because it's going to make making this window a little bit easier. Okay? So this was a casement window, which meant that it opens like as a hinge, like a door would open. So I'm not going to model a double hung. This is actually a little bit easier to model. I'm going to start with this outer frame. This is kind of the frame that goes around the window. And I'm going to make it, let's say, 1.5 inches thick. So I'll do extrude, surface. It should be solid, yes. And we'll say 1.5 inches. Right, there's the first piece. Okay. Now all of these are individual little panes of glass, so I really should move them up so that they're in the center of this. So I'll type move again, V for vertical, and we'll say 0.75, which is half of 1.5. So there it is, right? And so now those are kind of floating in there. And I also had this, which is kind of the dividing. It's dividing the windows into different lights. Lights are individual panes of glass. So let me go ahead and move that vertically. And I'll move it up, say, 1 inch. All right, so there it is. So I'm going to do a couple more extrusions. I'll extrude this, extrude surface. We're going to go negative ½ inch, I think. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so now I have rather quickly created all the individual panes of glass, right? The mullions that are there, the frame that goes around the window, right? And the frame here itself, okay? Now the only thing that I really need to do is these glass it's never going to look quite right if I don't have a thickness on both sides of the glass. So I actually need a little bit more to the glass. So I'm going to extrude these as well. So let me extrude, surface, and we'll do, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch. All right, so those now have some thickness to them. Right there. And so that they're centered, I'm going to move them down a little bit. Move, vertical, and this would be negative 0.0625, which would be 1/16 of an inch. There we go. So I'm just centering them in between those little mullions. Okay. So now I need to adjust this window out a little bit. So let's move it vertically. We'll start by going even, and let's move the frame out another 1/4 inch or something. Something like that. So you can see that now it's starting to look more like a window. Right? Let me go ahead and rotate this 3D so that it's in the vertical direction here. There. And let me move it again. 0, 0. All right. So I have this so that it looks kind of like a window. Looks reasonable. Okay. The other thing is I might put trim around the window, right, thinking that this is going to go in an exterior wall, so I'll go ahead and do some exterior trim. I can use this box corner to corner. Right, we'll start right there at the corner. Actually, yeah, we'll start right there. That's fine. And so I'll go at, let's say I do 2x4 trim. It would be 3.5 inches, comma, negative 1.5 inches. And then we'll go up to the top there. Let's move it over a little bit more. Hold on, let me turn on ortho. Let's go over 0.25 inches. So a lot of this I'm coming up with just out of my head, right, and having observed things. But if you have specific questions on how big something should be, of course, I'm happy to help on that too. So I just did a mirror to mirror that piece of trim across. And then let me go ahead and use my box again across the top of this to there, and we'll go up by 3.5 inches. So you kind of see how I'm making the trim that goes around the window. Okay, I can do the same thing down here for maybe a window sill. All right, so let's go something like this. Go from there, and we'll go 1.5 inches. Oops, wrong direction. Should have been negative, but just move it down. And I want that still to stick out a little bit, so let's do a scale 1D. So again, these are all the things that I've done over the last 4 or 5 classes. It's just the same stuff. It's just assembled a little bit differently. Right? So let's scale this so that it's maybe an inch and a half. Let's go 2.5 inches, something like that. Right, I'm just building a little sill under the window, and then we'll do one more little piece. Negative 3.5 inches. And I still need to move this down, so let me move. There we go. So something like that. And I basically built out a little frame that would represent the window. Okay? If I wanted some interior trim, I could do the same thing and put trim around the inside. I'll do that in just a second, but I want to kind of show where I'm going from here. So I have this window. It didn't take me too long to build it out. Now, you guys will have the whole day today, so you have 2.5 hours to work on this. So you have plenty of time, right? Take your time. And it's going to be about adding as much detail as you can to this particular model. And so depending on your end goal, you're going to add more or less detail, and also, of course, depending on your skill. But one of the things that we're going to have to make sure we do is set it up so that it can be a block and it can be imported and it has materials associated with it. Okay? So I'm going to come over to my layers, and because I brought in all of those AutoCAD drawings, I have way more layers than I really need. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and come down here, and from layer 0 on, this is all stuff that got imported. So I'll select those, and I'll press this little delete button, and we'll try to get rid of as many as we can. So let's say yes to all. And of course it won't, because there were block references in the CAD file. So let me go to Edit, Blocks, Block Manager. See all of these? These came in with that file. So this is the risk always when you import something. The other option, if it, instead of deleting all of those blocks, I can take my object, I can go to Edit, Copy, and then I can go to File, New, Large Object Inches, and then I can go to Edit, Paste, and I effectively got rid of all those extra layers. So that's probably an easier way of doing it. Okay, so I'm back here. I've got my object. What I need is I need a layer that's going to be called Glass. I need a layer that's going to be called Frame. I need a layer that's going to be called Trim. Right? And that's probably enough layers, but we'll see as we go. So let's start with the glass. I'm going to pick the poly surfaces, not the surfaces themselves. When I did the extrusion, I didn't check the box for delete the original surface. So I ended up with extra surfaces. I'll have to get rid of those. So under glass, I'll right-click and say Change Object Layer. Those are now on the glass layer. I can turn off the glass layer to confirm that they're on it. These were the extra single surfaces that I didn't need. I have to get rid of those. You'll see it on each of the extrusions that I did. So here we are with my mullions. I'll change those to be on the frame layer. I'll also change the frame itself to be on the frame layer. And then I'll turn those off. There's that original surface, and there's that other original surface. We'll get rid of those. These will be on the trim layer. So we'll take those, and we'll go to Trim, Change Object Layer. We'll turn those off. Right? And so this is probably jam, so let me add one more layer for jam, and we'll change object layer onto jam, and there's that last original piece. Okay, so now if I turn on the glass, the frame, the trim, and the jam, I get my whole window. Okay, but I'd like there to be an overarching layer, so we'll call this 2040 casement, right, or something like that, which identifies what the window is. And then I'll make glass, frame, trim, and jam sublayers of that window. So I just select them all, drag them on top of the 2040. And then, excuse me, I don't need layer 4 and layer 5, so we'll get rid of those. So I've effectively cleaned up everything, so it's nice and neat. I have a primary layer, and then I have separate layers for each of the materials that I'm ultimately going to be applying. Okay? Now, it's a matter of loading the materials and doing the texture mapping. So you see how this is an assembly of everything we've been doing. Okay? So let me go ahead and go to my materials, and I'm going to load just basic glass. So before we did, the fancy glass where we changed the tint color to be blue and whatever, when you're going to use this down the road, you're going to want to reflect the sky, and you're going to have a scene and all that sort of thing. So we don't need anything fancy in this rendering because it's going to come in down the road when we use our environments and whatever. So we'll start with basic glass. I'll go to V-Ray Materials, Glass, Basic Glass, and I'll go ahead and open it. So there's basic glass. I need materials for the rest of this, so let me go ahead and load material. Let's see here. Do a metal. Do I have anything? I'll do a copper patina for the finish. These are high-end windows, apparently. Why not, right? Load material. The other thing is I could make just like a nice brown. That would probably be more realistic. We need some wood for the trim. Let's see here. You know, I kind of like the dark oak is pretty nice. I'll go ahead and load that in, right? And so, like I said, if I didn't want copper windows, I could do like a brown or something. So I could right-click and say Create Material, Standard, and we'll change this to be kind of a brownish color. I don't know. There's got to be a brown in here somewhere. Hopefully, it's not too hideous of a brown. That one might be a little bit better, a little bit warmer brown. So I'll go ahead and say, OK. If we preview it, OK, that looks kind of like a window, right? Let me add a little bit of reflection to that. So let me go to Create Layer, Reflection. So I have a reflection layer. I don't want it to be too powerful, so let's do maybe at a 0.5 and a 0.5. We get a little bit of shine off of it. That'll work. So, and then I can call this brown window. And I'll go ahead and say OK. OK, so now it's a matter of actually assigning the materials to the layers this time. So instead of assigning it to the object, I'm going to assign it to the layers because I have it set up to assign it to the layers. So let me go ahead and right-click, or excuse me, on glass. See the little white circle there after the color? I'm going to go ahead and click on the white circle. It's going to say assign the material. I want it to be by V-Ray for Rhino, so I'll check the box for V-Ray for Rhino. Then I'll click Browse and choose glass. I'll say OK. I'll say OK. That's one way of doing it. You can see now, let me move this over so you can see it. It says basic glass for the glass layer. The other option is I can do it from within the material editor. So like brown window, for example, I can right-click and say apply material to layer, in which case I'll get a list of my layers. This way is easier when you have a small number of layers. When you have 150 or 200 layers in your final project, it's a lot harder to find your layer that you want it to be assigned to, in which case it's easier to do it from the layers window panel. So it's just either way works. Okay? So let me go ahead and assign this. It hid behind. Yeah, how nice, right? It hid behind this window, the little checkbox. Let's try that one more time. Apply to layer. This is going to be on the frame layer. Go ahead and say OK. The wood is going to be apply material to layer. It's going to be on the trim layer. And we'll go ahead and apply it to the jam layer as well. I'll say OK. So now, right, if I switch my view into rendered mode, we'll see that I have materials that are applied. Right? There's my brown of my window. I've got my wood. I've got the glass. So it's looking reasonable. But I would like to go through and do. Sorry about that. I would like to do a little bit of texture mapping to make sure that it looks nice. Okay? Since this is an individual piece of wood, I'm going to texture map these separately rather than together. Right? The two sides I can do together, and the bottom and the top I can do together. But for right now, I'll do them one at a time. I'm going to select it, come over to my properties, click on texture mapping, do a box mapping. Right? It's going to be a bounding box, world, capped. Right? And that doesn't look right, so I'm going to end up having to rotate it. So let's try 90 here. There we go. Looks better. Okay. I'll do the same thing for these pieces, so we can texture map them together. I'll do a box mapping, bounding box, world, yes. That time it did it correctly. My rotation. Right? Now, in this instance, right, I already have the texture mapping set correctly here. So instead of retexture mapping down here, I'm going to select this object, and I'm going to go to this little broom looking thing that says match mapping. And when I click on that, it's going to say select source object. I'll select this upper one, and I'll just copy the mapping since I already have it set right. So there, and we'll copy it there as well. Okay. Now on this piece, actually on the inside, looks already pretty good. So we'll go with that. The glass is already pretty good, and this is already pretty good. So now that I have this set up, right, I'm going to go into my V-Ray options, to my environment. I'm going to change the background to white. So I'm rendering just on a white field. And then I'll go ahead and do a render and see how it looks. All right, so it turned out pretty well. I'm fairly happy with it. So I'll go ahead and save this as a JPEG. And let me get to my correct day here. 208. This is going to be 2040 casement. Preview. And I'll go ahead and click Save. And so now I have a rendered example of what it looks like. But now I have to prepare this file to upload and to have everything associated with it so that somebody else could use it. Jose, you could use it, right? And that's the ultimate idea, is that somebody could then go in and borrow it. So I'm going to go ahead and go to File and then Save. And this is the Rhino file itself. So we'll call this same thing, 2040 casement. And I'll go ahead and click on Save. All right. But the other thing is, somebody might not have the same materials that I have, right? So I used an oak material, I used that brown material, and I used the basic glass. If they didn't have those materials, it would be courteous of me to include the materials with the file. And they don't automatically come with the file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my little materials here, and on any of the materials that I use, I'm going to right-click on it, and there's an option for something called Pack Material. And what that does is it creates a little zip file of the material itself. And so let me go into my Dropbox here, 136, 208. And this is basic glass, so we'll go ahead and make that a little zip file. The brown window here, I'll right-click and say Pack Material. And we'll save it there. And the dark oak, I'll right-click and say Pack Material. And I'll click Save. And what that does is it goes out and associates and collects all of the various files that have to do with that particular material, zips them all together, and puts them in one place. So somebody else could load that material if they needed to, right? And so that's the courteous thing to do. So I have that already set up. Let me go back to the Digital Tools site. I'm going to create a new post. And so this is a 20 by 40 casement window, and I could say it's Pella, right? And so I'm going to upload a couple things. First thing is I'll set the featured image, and the featured image is the rendered file that I have. So there's my preview. I'll go ahead and set that as the featured image. It'll show up here in just a second. There it is. Set featured image. All right, perfect. There's my little window. Now I'm going to come back up here, and I want to upload all the stuff that I need. And we have a couple different options. I can go to Add Media, and I can upload each zip file separately along with the Rhino file. So if I go to Upload Files, Select Files, I can say Rhino file. I'm holding down Control, Basic Glass, Brown Window, and Wood. Go ahead and say Open, and it'll upload all of those. The other thing is I could go to my flash drive and I could make one zip package that had everything in it. It kind of depends on how you want to do it. Doesn't really matter. Oh, looks like it blocked my Rhino file. I have to check that. My fault. So let me go ahead and I'll zip those into one file. So let me go to my flash drive. 208 here, and let me go ahead and hold down Control and select these there. And if I right-click, I can go to Send to Compressed Zip Folder, and this will basically zip it for me. All right, so let me go back to here, and I'm going to upload the one that has everything. And then once it's there, I'm going to select it so that it's blue and click on Insert into Post. And all it's going to do is put a text link to the file itself. There it is, into my post. It looks like it did all of them. Sorry, there it is. All right, so let me do a little bit of text to kind of clean this up. So there's download. If I had some notes about the window specifically, I could say notes, all material are included in the zip file, or whatever, if there was some specific note. And so there it is. Right, I have the zip file, I have my notes. So before I actually confirm posting it, I'm going to come down here, make sure we categorize correctly. So this is exercise 208. There it is. But as we come down here a little bit further, there's going to be something called Rhino blocks, okay, a separate set of categories. I'm going to go ahead and come in here, and I happen to have Pella listed as a window type, so I'll check that. And then I'm also going to come down here under window. This is a window. It's a casement window. Right? So I'm just trying to categorize it. And you can see that there's a bunch of stuff that's already been categorized. And that can help you. Right? It looks like I don't have the size. So if I want to add the size, I could say this is a 24-inch by 48-inch. Right? And this would be under size. There it is. So we'll just add that category. You can all add categories if you need to. Look for it first, obviously. This has oak in it, so I'll go ahead and add that. So once I have those check marks done, I'll go ahead and click on Publish. And I've now created my post. So the reason that we spend the time categorizing it is so that it goes into the listings under Resources, Rhino Blocks Library. Right? Fenestration is windows and doors, so I can click on that, and we'll see that here's a bunch of stuff. They're sorted by popularity, so when I initially do it, it's going to be down the list of ways. But here's all the windows and doors. Right? And we can go in here, and there's mine. Okay? So you can click on it, and then you can download it and be able to use it. Okay? Which is the whole idea. And yeah, so you submit it, and then you guys all can share these so that when, for example, you're doing your final project, if you want a casement window that looks like this or is close to this but maybe has different materials or something, here it is, you can download it. Right? It saves you time in the long run. So that's the goal today. I would recommend picking a window or a door. If you want to do something more complicated like a faucet or something, you're more than welcome to do that. The truth is it'll be easier to do a window or a door, probably take a little bit less time, etc. Sometimes on the windows and doors there's added layers of detail. So remember we did like chamfers on the edges. I could go through and chamfer surface. My distance might be 1/8 of an inch. So 0.125, there it is. Right? And I could come in and I could chamfer that to that, and we get a little bevel, etc. Doesn't look like it did it correctly, but you get the idea. Right, if I wanted to do something like that. So we have a lot of flexibility there, but again, it's about making sure the materials are installed correctly and you end up with your final piece. Right? I know it was quick that I was going through, and I was going through the steps rather quickly. It's not about following exactly the steps that I did. It's really today about you figuring out how to model something on your own, which is the goal. If you get stuck, right, call me over and I'll help you through whatever you're stuck. But the purpose is for you to be able to figure out how to do something in your own order without me scripting it for you. Does that make sense? Right? Because before too long, you're going to be modeling all the stuff on your own. Okay? The other thing that I'll add is I know you guys are all starting to think about your assignment 201s, your chair and table. A lot of people are interested in doing cushions and let's call them fluffy objects. That's normal for you to be interested in that. Hold off on trying to model any of it until next class, where we'll spend the whole day talking about fluffy objects and how to model those. Okay, so today's about hard-edged objects, not fluffy objects. Any questions before I? No?